All right, good morning. Um, most of you are here present, so I think we can start. Okay. Now, the lecture by itself won't take very long, so after the lecture, I'll have time to discuss your individual papers. Okay. The first ones to ask to discuss their papers should be Mr. Um, Villarreal and Mr. De Castro. Okay, so for today, I'll be discussing with you uh, how to do more or less the rest of the paper, chapters 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so uh, share screen. Okay, so let's start with syllabus here. Okay, I've done chapters. I've done the review of literature with you. Remember, keep in mind the review of literature is the summary of all the research that you do. Okay. You've all submitted your review of literature. Very good. And that is not the final form. You'll add on to it and make some revisions, modifications, the like. Okay. But now we'll be looking at chapter 3. Chapter 3 is the real focus of your paper. Okay. Now, it begins with a hypothesis. Then you have your theoretical framework. Okay. The hypothesis is the research question in more operationalized terms. Okay. In other words, the variables in the research question are to be presented by the data that you used in your regression equation. For example, if your research question was, say, economic growth reduces population growth, and this is based upon the theory and you use the theory that was proposed by Amartya Sen and by Lourdes Beneria. Okay, so that's your research question. The hypothesis would be for economic growth, perhaps the data that used would be sustained increase in GNP per capita. And then population growth, the data that you used would well be the rate of natural increase. So the hypothesis will be sustained increase in GNP per capita decreases the rate of natural increase. Or a sustained increase in GNI per capita decreases the total fertility rate. Okay. So in this way, it gives greater focus to your research. Okay. There are very many ways by which population growth can be measured, but you chose to focus on rate of natural increase or total fertility. Okay. Now, as I mentioned to you, the research question is a conclusion of a theory. Okay. Hmm. It, I'm not sure if it happened here, okay, but it has happened where the students will keep on telling me, oh, here's the research question. And they say that they could not find a theory that actually concludes that. And I said, I think because you did it baliktad. You first had the research question, you started looking for a theory to back it up, baliktad. You should have chosen a topic. Your topic would be, say, crime, or your topic is productivity, for employment, then you would look for theories on that, and it's from these theories that you'll find a conclusion that will become your research question. Okay. So here in your theoretical framework, you therefore discuss the theory from which you obtained your hypothesis. Now, of course, the theory or the two theories at most that you decided to focus on, okay, you'd have discussed them in your chapter 2, in your review of theoretical issues. Okay? So what you do in chapter 3 is that you present the theory, but not the entire theory. You just focus on those specific area, the specific question that you focus on. For example, in sense theory, that growth reduces population growth. Okay? His argument there had to do with the fact that with economic development, among its very, very many effects, include women being able to attain higher levels of education and are able to land jobs. Okay. Now, this theory provides so many other explanations, but that was one particular aspect. And perhaps that is what you would decide to discuss only here in your chapter 3 theoretical framework. Okay. I'm sorry, the theoretical framework should be B at A. Okay. So here, this is where you present the part of the theory that you decided to focus on. Okay. And you have the conclusion there. And like any theory, there would be equations here. Now, the methodology. Now, the methodology here would be discussing the econometric model that we used. Okay. Again, in your review of literature, you presented there many different econometric models on your particular topic. Okay. So one there you decided to adapt, and you discuss here the econometric model that chose that one. And what you present here is that you no longer present the original econometric model that has been discussed in chapter 2. But here, what you do in chapter 3 is to present the model as you regressed it. In other words, to present the model with the modifications and adaptations. It is here where you explain the modifications that you made. For example, if your paper is on inequality, and in your original econometric model, which use data from the United States of America, one of the variables there is race. And then you'll mention that you cannot do that here in the Philippines because we do not collect data on race. Okay, but you'll have to explain the reason for race to be a regressor and perhaps argue that an equivalent variable here in the Philippines would be, say, religion and or ethnicity, for which we have data. We collect data on one's religion, one's ethnicity, and the like. Okay, so this is what it means when you present the model that you ran for your regression. You presented here the model and the modifications you made from the original, from which you obtained it. Okay, and generally here, at least by the time you submit the entire paper, the first draft, you generally use the past tense. Okay? Most especially when you discuss the abstract, which I will discuss with you later on. You use the past tense. Right now, many of you would be writing it using the future tense because that is what you are planning to do. I expect that on your in your papers when you submit it Tuesday next week. I'll expect that because you still plan on running the regression. But when you start writing this, please keep in mind you have to write them all in the past tense. Okay? Because sometimes your reader, when they read that, then they make a note that would say, are you saying you haven't done this yet? So what will I be reading? So, you kept the future tense that you did not revise your assignment, your third assignment. By the time you write your first draft, you should always be using the past tense because you would have completed discussing it and doing your econometric regression. Okay. And then data sources. Now here, you discuss the data sets that were used to verify the hypothesis and their sources. If you look up, okay, here you're supposed to discuss that which is due on March 23rd, your conceptual framework, the hypothesis. Then you have your variables and operationalization, data requirements and sources, strategies for data gathering. Analytical tools would be econometric methods to be used. Variables and their operationalization, data requirements and sources, analytical tools. These are all taken care of in that section on methodology. Okay, where in the methodology, when you present your econometric model, okay, that's where you present the variables and how they were operationalized. Okay, as I mentioned to you in a previous lecture or discussion, since 2005, computing capacity has so increased that you now can have econometric models with 26 regressors and say 5,000 data observations and like. And in fact, there have been a number of theses in the past 2 years that were able to obtain online data, and the number of observations has gone up to 3,000 or so. The one who won the best thesis last year was the thesis of Ms. Paula Birong, and they're able to obtain 3,000 data observations. Like it's quite possible right now to do that. Okay, and then when you have your analytical tools, that's where you discuss whether you use panel data regression, two-stage least squares, three-stage least squares. When you submit your paper on March the 23rd, normally when you submit it, you present it with subsections. This one, like hypothesis, variables and operationalization, data subsections to that. But when you write your first draft and the final, remove all those subsections, but merely use the subsections here. Okay? The assignment for March 23rd details those things as a guide to what you will be presenting. Okay. But when you write down your research paper, your first draft and the final, you just have these as your subsection headings. Okay. Now, among other things, it says here strategies for data gathering. And usually, strategies for data gathering will involve a long discussion if you generated your own data. If you are going to implement a survey, what the survey questionnaire is, how will you obtain your survey responses and the like, okay? And then, umuuso na rin, lalo na sa development economics, yung tinatawag na randomized trials and the like. But you won't have the time to do that when you do strategies for data gathering, you'd all be just mentioning that you obtain your data from online sources, and you mention the online sources including the websites. Okay. Now so that would be your chapter 3, and that is the assignment that is expected next week. Okay. So before I proceed, are there any questions and comments? Okay. And some of you can also ask about your your own papers. Oh, Mr. Villarreal, ano yung itatanong niyo sa akin?
So hi sir. So the first question he had was, because we were planning on pivoting our paper from financial deepening, which is most of the papers being done on the nexus between financial development and inequality, to financial inclusion.
Mhm.
However, based on the data we have for financial inclusion, at most we can find around 20 years of data for the Philippines. Is that
Why
sufficient?
don't you do a panel data? 20 years of data for Philippines and say 9 other countries. O lalaki na yung kanya. Lalaki na
Okay.
yung, ano nyo, yung number of observations. No?
Okay. If we do a panel data, sir, how do we determine what other countries to use a panel data with? This is based on the
Well,
similarity.
look at it's from your research. What countries did they choose? If
Okay.
ever they're going to make a discussion where they include the Philippines, what other countries did they put together?
Okay.
Sure.
And this. Oh yeah, Rocco.
Oh, I was just gonna add, Ignacio. Presuming we get, say, regional level data. would
Ay,
we-
yan ang mga ayaw ko mga tanong, mga hypothetical.
Okay, but
Yung mga, sir, what if we find, Diyos ko ba, it's a miracle. By now, we should be dealing with what you have and what you have obtained.
busy.
So anyway, I'll allow you to ask me that hypothetical question, but everybody else, just ko at this stage, ayoko nang mapakinggan yung mga hypothetical questions. Mga, sir, what if we change our topic? So, ang gustong-gusto kong sabihin, what if you get an F? Okay, proceed.
Thank you, sir. We just wanted to ask if it was possible to do a panel panel regression on regional level data. So,
What do you mean by regional level data within the country?
yeah, within the country, yes.
Oh, the panel data is not naman per country.
Okay. Just clarify.
Usually, it means the panel data is for several years, and it is also for different groups, different categories. One such category will be countries. So you have country level data, pwede ring regions. Okay. Another category would be families based upon their income levels. Panel data yun. Okay, so you have, say, income, for example, families, FIES, were all grouped together in 10, okay, where the first group has the 10% with the lowest income. The 10th group is the 10% with the highest income. Then you look at changes in their expenditure patterns or income sources for 20 years. So that's 10 income classes over 20 years. Panel data yun. So it's not per country only. Pwede rin siyang per region, per province. Yeah, pwede yun. However, you should understand what the results of panel data regression mean. Then you'll have to go through checking what is known as whether you were supposed to do random effects or fixed effects regression. Fixed effects means that you fix the regression such that you consider whether, say, the fact of the country matters or not. Pag random, that means most of the variation is random. It has nothing to do with specific country or income class in them. Okay,
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
you're welcome. So for all of you, if you encounter the problem na ganyan, your data is for 20 years only. So to put in more data, try to get panel data and do the panel data regression. Okay. Ano pa? Wala muna. Okay, I'll proceed. So, pauunahan ko na ito. This is already in preparation for your first draft. Teka muna. Do we have another synchron? The fourth synchronous meeting, that means the first draft has been submitted. So I'm going to discuss now the rest of the paper. Okay. Sorry, I might have to step out for a few minutes later. This is essentially pagdating ng food delivery. Wala na pala akong pagkain. So nagpa-order ako sa Grab. Of course, I have to be specific. Mga ulam ko isda dahil, abstinence bukas. Right, so chapter 4, analysis. So sa chapter 4's analysis, okay, the first part is the discussion of data and results. Dito sa discussion of data and the results, the first part is the statistical description of the data that you used in the regression, all of them, all for every variable. Okay. And when we say just the descriptive statistics, okay, then you'll be using mean, mode, variance, especially when you use cross-sectional data, when you use time series data, then you'd have to mention their growth rates, trends, and average growth rates, say per decade, and that sort of thing. If it's panel data, you have to present a combination of your descriptive statistics, mean, mode, variance, and growth rates, trends, and the like. So that's the first part. Then the next part would be the analysis of results. Here, in the analysis of results, you present the results of your regression run. You present it there. You show the tables of data of the results. Okay. And then, of course, in your data, ang software ang ginagamit niyo, Mr. Villarreal? Anong software ginagamit niyo? Pretel?
Sir, I use it now, but I think we'll have to use data for project.
What?
I think we have to use data for our thesis given the model we want to use.
Okay. All of you just send me your thumbs up because I'll be asking, are any of you attending the Stata workshops, the online Stata workshops by Professor Pasqua, the one that I posted? Oh, okay. Okay, very good. Okay. Now, I'm asking about whether some of you are okay. I encourage the others to please attend that workshop. Okay, I sent a copy of the link to your Beadle, and I think I also posted it sa Canvas natin. Anyway, whether you post, whether you use data, as data or or um, or Gretel, your econometric results, among other things, lalabas na yung estimated coefficients and the likely show standard errors. And they also show automatically the asterisks. Okay? The asterisks indicate the level of significance. Okay, so if there are three asterisks, then it means significant at 0.01. Two asterisks significant at 0.05. And one asterisk is significant at 0.1. Okay? And you'd know from your statistics that it's the 0.05 significance that is considered valuable. Yun ang statistical significance niya. So in your results, you present the results of the econometric runs, and they would indicate which of your independent variables would be significant and what level of significance. Okay. But before you actually analyze the results, you have to go through as well the presentation of the diagnostics. Again, State and Greta already automatically provide you with the results of the tests for heteroskedasticity, autocorrelation, the variance, inflation factor, to check for the possibility of multicollinearity, all those various tests. They actually provide you with everything. And some of them might not be that important, considering whether you did say cross-sectional or time series or panel. Keep in mind, for example, that when your data are cross-sectional, like your analysis of say income expenditure patterns using the FIES of 2018, the Family Income Expenditure Survey of 2018, or the data on the annual Poverty Indicator Survey. That's not time series data. Such tests for autocorrelation will already be provided, but they may not be that relevant. Okay? So here you present those results, and among other things, you also discuss if you needed to make some changes in your model specification. Let's say if you notice there was heteroskedasticity, then what re-specification in the model would be used in order to reduce on heteroskedasticity and type. For the fans of Dr. Noel de Guzman, yan ang gustong-gusto niyang thesis, where the thesis spends a lot of time discussing yun na nga, kung may heteroskedasticity, discussing yung variance inflation factor, discussing how the results would show na walang multicollinearity. Isa-isa yan. Okay? Also, when you do your econometric runs, can you just give me 2 to 3 minutes? My food delivery just arrived. Excuse me. Okay, now, as I was about to say, when you do your econometric runs, okay, let's say make your first run and the like, you actually have to do several. Ganun talaga ang doing econometrics, especially nowadays. Kasi nga, paminsan isang click lang, enter, labas na kaagad ang results. So you can make several runs from now on. You might need to make some modification, some respecification, magto two-stage least squares ka, three-stage least squares, or there's one particular variable rather than using the levels such as G and I, you tried to do another one, this time using say not the level of G and I, EPP adjusted, but the G and I growth rate, binago ko, you'll be doing those things, make several runs and the like. For your first draft, you should present here in the body the one particular result, set of results that you've decided to use. Now, I suggest you still write down the process that you'd undergone with the blood, sweat, and tears. You write it down. You say, this is the first run that we did, and these were the results, and we noticed the changes and the like. And I suggest you write them down and place it in the appendix. Okay? Kasi kung nagkataon ang reader ninyo, say, halimbawa yan si Dr. Usman, gusto niya yung discussion na yan kasama sa analysis of results that you go through that. Meron namang ilang readers, they just want to see the final results. Okay? Yung mga kwento ninyo, mga how you went through all those runs, you can just place it in appendix. So yeah. So I suggest that's what you do. Okay? Yung mga mahaba-habang kwento yan, you place it in the appendix so that your thesis can stick to the 50-page limit. But when your reader, like Dr. Guzman, would like you to place that in the body, okay, you can go beyond 50 pages. The 50-page limit is only for the first draft. Anyway. Okay. Then, appraisal of the theoretical framework. So now, dun sa analysis of results, once you've gone through the diagnostics, you will mention that these are the ones which are significant from the data on the Philippines and other countries. And then compare your results with the results of the econometric model that you adapted. Okay. And here, sa appraisal of theoretical framework, this is the part where you now discuss in an open-ended way na yung mga results niyo, what do they say What are some of the implications of the results with regards to your theoretical framework? Did your results um, confirm some of the arguments of your theoretical framework, or are there particular aspects that were not at all confirmed? And compare them with the results mentioned that you also saw in other models. Then you can also discuss what would be the implications of your results on policies that you discussed in policy issues. Okay. And also, you can also say there what results insofar as methodology is concerned. Like, for example, suggest the use of, say, three-stage least squares, or the use of more regional level data, or you can also here recommend, say, that governments start collecting data on certain issues, certain of the factors or variables that you thought were important, that were available in other countries, but were not being done here. Okay? For example, you might want to suggest collection of data on wealth and the like. Yeah. Okay. Now, chapter 5, conclusions. Okay. Summary, conclusions, and recommendations for further research. Chapter 5, okay, rule of thumb. The last chapter that you write is chapter 1. So yung sinabit nyo sa akin, yung first assignment nyo, that was your initial chapter 1. Do not copy-paste that. Babaguhin nyo yun. Because you've done so much and lots of changes have happened before you reach this stage. And that's why marami nang hindi na yung pwede maging chapter 1 in yung first assignment. Okay? So chapter 1 is the last chapter that you write. Our rule of thumb also here is that the review of literature chapter is usually the longest chapter. Now, the shortest chapter is chapter 5. It just presents the summary, the conclusions, and recommendations. In the summary, you just mention there, okay, restate there what was your research question, what was your hypothesis, what was the theoretical framework that you used, and what econometric model did you use, and what procedure did you follow. If you say use panel data regression, if you did three-stage least squares, siya pala ko integration tests, okay, lalo na pag sa time series data, gagawa kayo ng tinatawag na co-integration tests. Hindi na yata naituturo yan sa 117, but co-integration tests can be easily done by state and the like, but you have to read up on what it means to understand what co-integration is. Okay? Now, and it's usually applied on time series data. Okay. So yan ang nilalagay niyo sa summary. Sa conclusions, here in the conclusions, now you present a summary of your chapter 4, section C, the appraisal of theoretical framework. Here, you summarize the results. You mention here which particular factors proved to be significant and what the results of your econometric tests suggest with regards to the policy, theory, methodological issues. And yeah, it's just a summary of chapter 4, section C. Finally, in recommendations for further research, you now mention here what were areas that in your research you found out that more research need to be done here. Bawa, yung sabi kanina ni Mr. Villarreal, they did not encounter a lot of papers with regards to financial deepening. So maybe here, there's a time where they say, we are recommending further research be done with regards to the issue of financial deepening, because it's important because financial deepening does this and all that. Okay. So here, this is just a short chapter. It's the shortest chapter in the entire thesis. Also, chapter 1 and chapter 5 are the only chapters na walang tables of data, charts, figures, and the like. All the tables of data, charts, figures, and mathematical equations, lahat niyan nasa chapter 2 to chapter 4. Pero dito sa chapter 1 at sa chapter 5, wala. Okay? Any questions so far? Wala. Katapos, email kayo ng email. Request ng request for Zoom meeting. Tapos yung mga pinagtatatanong sa akin, pwede mapag-usapan na. Paminsan nga ako may mag-request sa inyo ng Zoom meeting, sir, can you have a Zoom meeting? At magmerienda lang tayo. Mas gusto ko pa nga yun. Para naman relax tayong lahat. But anyway, dito nga pala sa chapter 4. So, meron kayong table of your results. Okay, ayan na. The table of results in the life. Dito, you no longer show the source. Okay. Just a minute. So chapter 4, say you have your table of results, okay? Or yung table ng descriptive data on your data, and then the various tables of results that you have. Mga results ng heteroskedasticity test, variance inflation fact test, co-integration test. Itong mga tables na ito, you no longer need to place a source. When there is no source na nakalagay dyan, ibig sabihin, kayo yung gumawa ng table na yun. Gawa ninyo. Ganun naman talaga. Because these tables and graphs and charts, they came from your research. Okay? So there's no need to place your source, author's work. As much as possible, do not make reference to yourselves as the authors have found this, authors argued. Avoid as much as possible making reference to yourself. Not in the first person, and also pag third person use it, do it very sparing. Okay. Right, so you have time here. I'll now go through the other elements of your first draft. Although hindi nyo pa ito isasubmit, okay, I'll go through it now. So after your chapter 5, you have your bibliography and your appendices. Sa appendix nyo, importante na you place there the data that you used in your econometric runs. Okay? You have your table there in data form, your data in table form. Table ha, hindi graphs, charts, and like. Para nakikita doon yung GNI of the Philippines, GNI per capita. Okay? Kasi pag nakikita mo, that's when you begin check kung tama yung ginawa ng estudyante before, noon pa. So, when present yung estudyante. Walang significant lang makuha result. Mabuti na lang yung kanyang data nasa nandun nga sa appendix. So tinignan namin, napansin namin, ba't ganito yung GNI ninyo ng Pilipinas? It kept on increasing. Kept on increasing. So I checked yung years nagkaroon ng recession, 1983 to 84. It kept on increasing. Then I finally said, ano to? Is this GNP in current prices? Ibig sabihin, hindi mo inalis yung effect ng inflation. You did not use deflated values. Nakatunga nga yung estudyante. So, yun. Sabi ko, I suggest you get the deflated values of GNP rather. Aba nung gabing yun, Diyos ko, sa kanyang Facebook page. Friend kasi ako ni Mo. Ba nag-post siya. Okay. Rule of thumb, always deflate your figures. Ay talaga, meron kang alleluia mo, eureka mo. So, doon nagkaroon siya ng mga results na may significance. Kasi nga hindi naman pala niya kinuha yung real values, deflated values. But anyway, that's the value, that's the importance of putting the data. Ngayon, kung masyadong maraming data ang ginamit mo, like you used 5,000 observations and the like, rather than presenting all that data, what you can do is to present the web page and the method of accessing the data and the method of identifying the what you call this, the columns that indicate the data from that you use in the regression that you sourced. And so the idea here is that at least by providing the data, either you provide the actual data used or your access to the data when you have a huge sample, like 5,000 respondents. And like the idea here is that future researchers can actually replicate what you did and check kung tama. Okay? So yun ang importanteng appendix na ilalagay ninyo. Ilalagay niyo dyan yung mga data that you use in regression and yung kwento nyo about the steps that you took in your regression until you got this particular result that you placed in your body. And when you make that cuento about what you did with regards to your econometric runs and the like, every step of the way you present also the tables of data. Again, format rules. The basic source for format is the University of Chicago Style Manual, which is available online. So you can check there how to cite sources, how to present bibliographies. Okay. So it's 30 to 50 pages, including tables, figures, and charts. The 30 to 50 pages do not include the bibliography and the appendices. And you will need to redo your first draft if in your paper you always are making reference. Results can be seen in the appendix, and the results have to be shown in an analyzed form in the body. The rule of thumb is for as long as a table of data or a chart, a graph, and the like, as long as it can fit one page, then you place it in the body. Okay. When it has to go more than one page, then it has to go appendices. Okay. So it's double spaced. The font size is 12 points times New Roman. The only things that are bold-faced are the chapter and appendix, headings, and titles, which are all caps. So you have chapter 1, all caps. 1 is Roman numeral. Then next line, introduction, all caps, and they're bold. Center. Okay? The other things that are bold are titles of tables, figures, and charts. Pero ano naman siya, caps and lowercase, like table 2.3. Bold, center. Next line, caps and lowercase. Indicators of financial inclusion, selected Asian countries. Yun. That's also bold. Okay. Then the subsection headings are also caps and lowercase. Subsection headings, there's a chapter 2, the policy issues, theoretical issues, empirical issues, the ones that are indicated in your outline. And these are the only ones that are bold-faced. Huwag nyo na i-bold-face yung iba. Huwag na kayo mag-bold-face ng kung ano-ano. And then, for citations, you just use surname year. So, Todaro and Smith, 2009. Okay, kasi pag sabihin mong you got it from Todaro and Smith 2009, all I need to do is look at your bibliography and check Todaro, Michael, Stephen Smith, 2009. What's the title of that book? Nandun yun sa bibliography. So you don't need to make mention of that in the body. And the only things that you italicize are the titles of books and journals. Also, discussion paper series number something, working paper series number something. Lang ang ina-italicize. You do not italicize anything else. Also, in your bibliography, you no longer put parentheses on the years, nor do you put quotation marks for titles of articles and like that. Sa bibliography, wala na parentheses at wala na quotation marks. Okay. Any questions? So if I can go back to the other items in your research paper, tatapusin ko na itong methodology kasi itong discussion na ito kasi nga although your first draft is due sometime in April, wala na pala tayong synchronous meeting before the submission of the first draft. So this is the research paper before chapter 1. So meron kang title page. Kopya nyo yung title page na ginawa ng mga nag-submit ng thesis last semester, which I put sa Canvas, available yung thesis na yun. Then, after the title page, okay, usually there's a blank page, and that is a requirement. Although this is done online, we follow the rule for hard copies, and that is pagkatapos ng title page may blank page. The idea of that blank page is so that the title page nababasa mo and hindi tawag nito, what is printed in the next page will not be seen on the title page in case manipis yung papel. So you have a title page and then a blank page. The next page after that is a title page. Okay, you write this down. Huh? The next page is not required. The blank page is required, but the next page is not required. The next page is your dedication page. Okay. If you want to dedicate your thesis to F. Meron na akong nag-dedicate ng dedication page to D for all your inspiration. Sino kaya yun? Letter lang, D. So of course, yung mga ilan na nakabasa, mga faculty, other, inisip nila, siguro same-sex lover ito. Aba, Diyos ko, si Daphne pala yung kanyang pet chihuahua. Yun ang kanyang inspiration. Okay lang. You can write whatever it is that you want in your dedication page. So the dedication page is not required if you want to. The important thing lang sa dedication page is that yung i-dedicate ninyo, just go, wag naman one page. At most, 2 lines. Okay, wag naman kung sino-sino i-dedicate ninyo. Wala nang kabuluhan kung ang dami yung pinag-dedicate. Okay. Like you dinedicate mo sa lahat ng mga naging teacher mo since preschool. Gusto pati yung piano teacher mo. Gusto. In the next part, after your dedication page, the next part is also optional, nasa sa'yo, is the acknowledgements. Ayun. Just acknowledgements, ayan. Acknowledgements, all caps, and then you write down. Here, you can refer to yourself in the first person. Okay. We would like to acknowledge the help of all those people who made this particular thesis possible. Okay. The staff of the Philippine Statistical Office. Tapos kadalasan yan. To our wonderful advisor, Dr. Beniden. Diyos ko, hindi na ako magbibigay ng grade ninyo, yung final. Kaya yung ilan, they try to get mo a commitment dun sa reader nila para isama dun sa acknowledgements. To our reader, most kind and wonderful Dr. Noel de Guzman or Mr. Dino Saklala, whatever. For our beloved parents, for their inspiration, their help. Yun ilagay niyo sa acknowledgements. Saka meron pa nun mga naglalagay. To Ate Sai and to Ate Rhea, the most beautiful secretaries in the world. So you can do that sa acknowledgements. The thing about acknowledgements is do not write more than 2 pages of acknowledgements. I know you might want to thank so many people, but you just have to be selective. Again, you maybe you don't need any more to acknowledge your piano teacher. Unless yung piano teacher mo, tinuruan kayo ng stata. Okay? Ayan. So, ayan. Yun ang acknowledgements. And then, the next part, ito is required. Necessary ito. The abstract. Abstract is no more than 300 words. Here, this is a short summary of the paper. Dito sa abstract, you state there first, okay, the hypothesis of the paper is this, and this is based upon the theory of so and so. It used the econometric model by these authors, and 3-stage least squares was employed using data for the Philippines from 1960 to 2019. Ganyan. The results show that this factor, that factor, and the like were significant, which confirms the results from other countries, but are quite different from the results of this country. So this suggests, the results suggested that governments might need to stop quantitative easing. It's a short summary of the entire paper. And then dito sa abstract, it's also one of the last things you write down because you have to write it down in the past tense. You cannot write it down before you complete the paper. You have to do this pag natapos niya, so nasa past tense. So it's a summary of the paper that you did. Okay? So then you have table of contents. Then your list of figures and list of appendices. Ngayon, the page 1, using Arabic numeral 1. Okay, this is Arabic numeral 1, yan, 1, 7 on the Arabic numerals yan. Okay, they're actually Indian in origin. But the Italians first saw these numerals being used by Arabs, so they called them Arabic numerals, and that's how the Europeans started to call them, even though the origin is European, is Indian. Okay, now The Arabic numerals page 1 begins with the first page of the introduction. Kaya sa table of contents, nakalagay doon introduction, page 1, yun. Nakalagay doon 1 sa table of contents. However, before your introduction, the sections here, yung title page, abstract, list of figures, list of appendices, they also have page numbers, but the page numbers are lowercase Roman numerals. Okay. Ang page 1, Roman numeral I, is the blank page after title page. The abstract will be Roman numeral 2. Okay. Ngayon, kung meron ka dedication page and acknowledgements na 2 pages, so mangyayari, abstract is Roman numeral page 2, acknowledgement, Roman numeral page 3 to 4, abstract becomes Roman numeral page 5. Lahat namang inandun pa rin sa table of contents. Okay? Sa appendices are numbered. Appendix A1, Appendix A2, Appendix A3. Tapos, nakalista yung titles ng appendix. Okay. Okay. O any questions? Ay, Diyos ko, summer na. Ang init. I feel quite exhausted. I do not know if it's the fatigue brought about by this more than 1 year quarantine, the heat, or I'm just older. Anyway, may tanong? Anyone? Mr. Valenzuela, may tanong?
So I was wondering lang, like you mentioned kanina na we can kind of modify our econometric model. Kasi like for our thesis, our variables, di ba, our inflation rate and crime rates, we found an econometric model na it relates inflation and property crimes, but we want to know if we can modify property crimes to just crime rates in general.
Aba, nasa sa inyo na yan.
Okay, sir.
Yung mga sinubmit ninyo sa akin, yung chapters 1, and chapter 2, yung RRL, and like, those are not cast in stone. Over time, you can make changes and modifications. Actually, by the time I read your first draft, I will have no memory of what you wrote down before. Okay. It will help if, let's say, early on, you've already decided to commit to a particular research question, so marami kayong nagawa. Unlike if you made a huge change, say, last week or 2 weeks, and you're not able to get enough readings or information, yun lang ang mapapansin ko. However, you can make modifications over time. By the time you submit to me your first draft, hindi ko na maalaala what you submitted sa chapter 1, 2, and 3. Ang sasabihin nyo pa lang naman sa akin next week is your proposed chapter 3, which means I'll just be looking at, yun na nga, kung malinaw bang inyong theory at yung econometric model. Usually, ang mangyayari next week is I'll be telling you, yung theory nyo, econometric model. It's not a theory. And I'll suggest you how a theory should look like. Okay? Or sometimes baliktad. Yung sinabi yung theoretical framework niyo, yun palang econometric model niyo. So yes, you can keep on making changes. And in fact, pagdating ng reader ninyo, meron pa rin siguro ipababago siya. Okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Mr. Chua, any questions?
Wala naman, sir.
Hindi ka ba naiinitan sa jacket mo yan?
Malamig po dito.
You're the one in Canada.
Opo.
Nga pala, oo. Magpainggit na naman ito. Okay, right. Okay, Mr. Chua. Miss Del Rosario, any questions?
None so far, sir.
Okay. O, Waki. Oh, what is Waki? The guy for whom any pose in a photo is a Waki pose.
Wala, sir. Wala.
Talaga? O ba, nagpakita ka agad ng ano siya? Ng Waki pose niya. What is to class?
Oh, it's an org event for later, sir.
What?
An org event for later.
Oh, okay. As always, pakit na naman. O, Mr. De Castro, any questions?
Nothing. None anymore, sir. Thank you, sir.
Aba, naka-jacket ka rin. Nasaan ka?
In my room, sir.
I suppose so. But where is this room? In Antarctica.
No, sir. That's just the profile picture, sir.
Ah, okay. Saan ito? Parang nasa ano ka? Sa Budapest?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ah, okay. Yeah, very nice city. Charming. Although I have to admit, mas masarap yung pagkain sa Prague. But anyway. Hmm. Okay. Miss C, Miss Maddie C, any questions?
No question, sir.
You all right?
Yes, I'm right, sir.
Oh, good. Kasi if I'm asked if I'm all right, I'm not sure kasi parang nagugutom na yata ako. Anyway. Oh, Mr. Biacora, any questions?
None, sir.
Okay. Mr. Lim, Nathan Lim.
None as well, sir.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Pedrosa.
None, sir.
Oh, Mr. Vargas.
None, sir.
Mr. Cruz, Rafael Pio Cruz.
None, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so did I call everybody? Yeah, okay. Paano ba to? So I'll just await your submissions on Thursday. I mean on Tuesday. Okay. I'll return them to you as soon as is possible. And then yung first draft ninyo, have already given you a discussion, a rundown on how the entire paper, the first draft would look like. And our next synchronous class is upon submission of the first draft. By that time, ang pag-usapan na natin is ano, kasi when you submit your first draft, I will return it with some comments and the like. Generally, pag nasubmit na yung first draft, I would tell you not to start inviting a faculty member to be your reader. Some of you might already want to invite them this early and show them your paper. Nasa sa inyo, as long as the person agrees. Okay, it has to be another faculty member sa economics department. Okay, then in that next synchronous class, I'll also be discussing with you how to go over your presentation kasi ang presentation nyo live right, sa Zoom. And then I'll also show to you the grading sheet. So meron kayong guide for your presentation and the like. Since your presentations are sometime in April and May, I suggest you try to schedule your presentation early kasi yung reader niyo might ask you to make some changes in the paper. If you're lucky, the changes are minor, but sometimes the changes can be major. Like for example, sasabihin niyo ng inyong reader, why don't you use this set of data for 3 more countries, incorporate them in your panel and that sort of thing. Okay. So at least if you do your presentation early enough, there's time for you to do revisions. Sometimes you could be lucky. Meron akong estudyante na nung pag-present nila, ayos, ang taas ng grade ng binigay ng teacher, A. Okay. And very minor revision. So they have 1 month just relaxing na they did not need to worry. Tsaka since the presentation is sometime April and May, I hope by that time maluwag-luwag na. So some of you, especially the men, can have your haircuts and whatever. Okay. Okay. At saka yung inyong thesis defense, yung presentation ninyo, hindi pwedeng naka-stop video. Dapat nakikita yung mukha ninyo. Okay. Okay, so if there are no questions right now, okay, I'll be posting a recording of this presentation sa Canvas natin as soon as possible. Okay. Okay. So without further ado, okay, so enjoy the weekend and I never mastered this, okay? Ayan. Bye and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.
My pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
See you.
Sir.
All of you. See you. Bye-bye.